name's Lorna, Jeffrey. I was born in St Vincent, a small village called Spring Village on the leeward end of the island. I came to migrated to St Albans in 1965 on a ship called the Escania. I grew up in St Albans. I went to Fleetville Primary School and then on to Sandfield Road, All Girls Secondary School. From there I progressed to Barnfield for College of Further Education in Luton, where I did a 4 years fashion design clothing technology degree.
How old were you when you came over?
I was 10 years old. I came with my grandmother on my mother's side and my younger brother.
And how did the arrival meet your expectations?
It was cold. The ship landed at Southampton, and I remember it being cold. My father collected us. One of my first questions I asked while driving from Southampton to St Albans was, why are all the houses joined together? Having come in from the Caribbean where all the houses were detached. Small they were, a lot of little wooden houses, but they were all detached, and suddenly I'm there with all these long rows of terrace houses. It was very strange. And back in those days, it was also very foggy because we still had the coal fires. So oftentimes you weren't able to see more than a few feet. So it was very disorientating. It was cold. It wasn't nice. I have to say I didn't like it. But you get accustomed to it.
And then kind of in the years that follow, you got used to living in St Albans and you kind of frequented school, you said?
Yes, like I said, my first school was Hatfield Road Primary, and then I went to Sandfield, All Girls Secondary. And you just get used to it because you have no choice. As a child, you were never asked whether you would like to come because your parents migrated first and left you with the grandparents. And after your parents are settled, they then brought the kids over. But the kids have no choice. It would have been nice to have a choice.
And can you explain, if you're happy to, what you were doing upstairs? You were writing a list of different places.
Oh, we were writing a list of workplaces and just factories we worked at and places we worked at.
Would you be happy to expand on what those places were?
Okay, after I finished my studying, my first place of work, my first place of work while I was still at school was the Coke factory, Aquascutum. I worked there for the summer holidays. That was some experience because it was summer and it was very hot. When I finished studying, I worked at the Chelsea Girl Boutique, which no longer exists. That was way back when. That was in the town centre in St Albans. From there, I progressed to a larger Chelsea Girl at High Street, Kensington in London. After that, my first job in the fashion industry was working with Sandra Rhodes, the designer, which I worked for her about 15 years. So working for her, I progressed from being a hand finishing, because the dresses were very intricate, very expensive, one-off, individual. The main fabric she used was chiffon. All her designs were her personal designs, and all the fabric was screen printed by hand. I started off, like I said, as a hand finisher. I then progressed to be a machinist, because although I studied fashion design, I really enjoyed the actual making of garments. That was my passion. I ended up being head of her work studio and also managing her shop in Mayfair. I worked on clothes for people like the Duchess of Kent, Princess Margaret, several other American film stars, you know, the rich and famous. I got to meet a lot of them. Went to lots of nice weddings where I learnt, I got an acquired taste for champagne and caviar. One of the nicest weddings I went to was John Menzies, the then newsagents. I did the wedding dresses for 2 of his daughters. So I always seem to get invited to nice weddings. I even travelled to Italy to deliver a wedding dress and attend a wedding. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
And how would you say your heritage has influenced your designs?
Repeat that.
Sorry, how would you say your heritage and your background has influenced your designs?
I wouldn't really say it has influence, because having left St Vincent at such a young age, you sort of, growing up in England, you tend to put aside everything that you knew in St Vincent. I rediscovered St Vincent at the age of 35, so I was very unfamiliar with anything there. You know, I learnt design when I went to college, and that was influenced by English teachers, so you were geared towards the English fashion as opposed to the Caribbean. So honestly, truly, I wouldn't say my heritage was influenced.
And you mentioned that you've rediscovered St Vincent. Is there anything that you'd like to share on that point?
I actually rediscovered St Vincent because I left at the age of 10. How I rediscovered St Vincent, I visited my parents one day, and they were watching cricket that was being played in St Vincent. And I remember looking at the TV and thinking, is that how St Vincent looked? Because it had completely gone from memory. And I thought, I've got to go and visit that place. So I worked and worked and saved to pay for my first holiday to St Vincent with my daughter, who was 5 at the time. And I thought, wow, this place is amazing. Why did we ever leave? It's so beautiful, it's so natural. So now I'm actually in a position now where I spend part of my time in England and part of my time in St Vincent, now that I'm retired. So.
You couldn't tell. This is brilliant. Gosh, you're an absolute pro. Looking beautiful as well. What excites you, or if anything at all, what are you enjoying about today's event?
It was interesting to meet. First of all, I didn't know such an event existed, and it's been interesting to meet various people and listen to their stories about where they worked and what they did. It's just actually really nice coming back to St Albans, going back to my roots, and just to meet others and see what they're getting up to and what they've done. I've seen a few faces that I'm familiar with from way back when. Yeah, that's really it. You know, I'll see how it progresses, get to know some new faces, probably meet some friends.
Is there one thing you'd hope that the exhibition itself kind of teaches people who are maybe exploring and discovering kind of the African, Caribbean culture and contributions towards St Albans for the first time?
Okay, that's not such an easy one for me to answer, but what it teaches them, I think it teaches people it's good to not forget where you came from. That's very important. Whatever you're doing now, it's always good to remember your background. Basically that's it. Yeah, do not forget your past, good or bad. It's always good to remember and be humble.
And so I suppose on that point, could you say that it's very important for the young people to discover their heritage as well?
I think it's extremely important for young people to discover their heritage and remember not necessarily their culture, but their parents' and grandparents' culture. Times have changed, times have moved on, but I think it's good for them to know where they came from, as we say in the Caribbean. Remember where you came from and not forget. I think it's important, yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you mind showing me this incredible bag before I explain what it is?
Okay, this bag, which is made from straw, originates from St Vincent. This is a culture in St Vincent that still goes on to this day, and most Vincentians who've returned from England will come back with one of these in some shape or form. They still produce them. This one belonged to my mother who passed recently, but they are still produced as a craft in St Vincent. That is one of the main crafts on the island. So that's it.
So how would you make a bag like this?
Okay, the straw is made from I'm not sure the name of the plant, but it's a huge, massive plant that looks like a palm tree. The branches are dried and then dried in the sun and then stripped. And then it's just all interwoven by hand. Everything is done by hand. It's interwoven by hand. And like I say, that's a craft that is done to this day, still exists.